Hi guys, what I'm going to show you today is why you should sometimes view your scene through the light shadow cams. So I'm just going to load LaFemme R1. I see there's a new LaFemme 2 figure out now. I don't know if she's any good. Let's give her some clothes just for modesty. Okay, so I've double clicked in the library there, and then I would need to go up here and do figure conform to LaFemme. Or I could just drag here from the content library and drop it onto the figure I want it to conform to, which is an easier way of doing it. I always forget to do that. Okay, so we've got a scene here. We've got the 4 default lights here. We've got LaFemme in the middle of the scene. Now, first thing I'm going to do is just use the default script here to delete all the lights. Now I'm going to click on Create Light, hold that down and add a spotlight. This was one of the great new features that they added in Poser 12 at the end of the update cycle for Poser 12 was this hold and add feature. Now you'll see here that I have a light dots thing down here. It's one of Ken 1171 scripts, and up here I have just one lights there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the properties for that light, and I'm just going to change it to we'll call it face light. So it's a spotlight that we want to face at her face. So the light position is down here on the floor in front of her somewhere. But let's suppose that this was my final render frame. So I don't want to move my main camera. So I'm just going to press A. I've redefined my keys so that they control which view I look. So I press A, that takes me to the auxiliary camera, and I can move that around, and the light is down here somewhere. You see it? So what I'm going to do, what I want to do is I want to move that light up to a kind of 45 degrees above her head somewhere. So I want to move it up and over here. So a classic 3-point lighting setup. But if I'm in the main camera viewing, or if my scene is very, very busy, where moving stuff around is quite slow to do, it can be awkward moving the lights around. Excuse me, swig of coffee. It can be moving the lights around, awkward moving the lights around, like changing cameras and everything slows down. So I want a very precise way of moving the light. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. This is a script from Ken 1171. And if I go down to here, rename shadow light cams. Now, shadow light cams really is a bit of a misnomer. Yes, I realize that a light produces a shadow, but it also produces light. So just call it light cams. It's a strange, you know, this is not a Ken problem. This is a Poser problem. He's just using their terminology. But if I rename, and it automatically does this script here, and now if I go up here, you'll find when I do camera view, the bottom camera, which was previously just called shadow light 1 or 4 or whatever it is, it's now shadow light cam face light. So that's the name that I gave it. So if I choose that camera, no, I won't choose that for now. I'll show you the alternative. So I want to position this light. So the simple way to do it, the way that most of us do, is just go into the lighting controls, would move it up there. See, I'm looking at the shadow in the background to let me see what's going on. I'm going to move it off to the side. I'm going to point it 45 degrees in Y so that as we move it, it kind of makes sense. I think I've gone the wrong way. Let me go that way. There we go. Going to move that a bit more. Going to move it up. Now I'm going to have to do 45 degrees downwards as well. And there's kind of, okay, that's position. That wasn't too arduous, maybe not quite as precise as I might have wanted. And then if I want to change the angle end, so what I want to do is I want to create a light field just around her face. Now, we could use it as I'm going to use it here to create dramatic lighting where just her face is shown and the rest of her body is in shadow. Or we could be using this at a much lower intensity, say 5 or 10%, just to use it as a very subtle fill light. So here, if I do angle end, so imagine that what we're doing is changing the the angle of the width of the light cone. So as I reduce that, the light cone gets smaller. Now you see I'm not quite as precise as I thought I was. So a fix for that would be, let me just go back to the original light position on the floor. So the light's back down on the floor now, hence you can see from the shadows kind of showing up from her legs. The first thing that I could do is do point at, and then I do point at, and then I go down and find the figure, hold down the Alt key, left click on that little triangle, and it opens up all the way, and then I just click head. Now, one of the beauties of Le Femme is it's got far more elements to the head, so I could be more precise with what I point at, but it doesn't matter for now. So head. So now the camera, wherever the camera moves, it will be pointing at her head. You can also use that with objects, by the way, to track, say, with cameras and stuff like that. So, again, I'm moving Y. But now I don't have to worry about the framing of the light. So now I move across in X. You see that shadow move? And I know that her head will be the focal point of the light. So now when I reduce the angle end, that focuses precisely on her head. So that's a really nice, easy way of doing that. But let's say that for some reason you wanted precise control over the light. Say we weren't pointing at a person here, but we were pointing at a position in space. So as she moves, I still want the light to be facing at that area. Supposing, I don't know, maybe I was just creating a lighting effect on the background. So point at is really great when you've got a figure, but then when you start animating the figures and moving them out of the light field, things can be a little bit more complicated. I hope I'm making sense. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Object, and I'm going to change point at, and I'm going to take it from head, and I'm going to return it to none. So now the light is just pointing straight forwards. And now what I'm going to do is, rather than positioning the light from the main camera, or I could have done it from the OGS camera, I'm going to do camera view, shadow cam face light. So now what I'm doing is I'm looking through the actual light itself. So now when I move up, although I'm moving the light, but I'm also moving my viewpoint. So as I move up, and I move to the sides, maybe a bit higher to get more of a look down on her. And now as I start to use these rotation controls, I can very precisely position her head in the center of the camera. And now let's change that angle end, zoom in on her face. Okay, so that's imperfect, so I'm just going to change this Y rotation a little bit, X rotate a little bit, maybe just move that angle end a little wider. So now what we have is a lovely camera, a lovely light that is exactly where I want it to point, but doesn't depend on point at. So then when things move in and out of that light, the light is still facing exactly where I want it to face. So let me just go X rotate up there a little bit. Okay, so here's one other little pro tip. You see here I'm having trouble with the fineness of the rotation. So what I could do is I can click on this little arrow here, which is the settings for the current control, and I go into settings, and at the moment the sensitivity is set to 1. So if I change that to point, let's say 0.1, so it's 100 times less sensitive, or more sensitive rather, finer. Now when I change this, what was I doing, X? See, I've got much more granular control. And now when I press M, go to my main, you can see that that scene now is that light is precisely on our head. You can see the shadow back here. Because the lights in Superfly obey real world physics, it will actually have some spillover onto our body, but it's a nice way of getting precise control. So now I'll just do a quick render before I disappear, and you can see really beautiful light. So guys, I hope you found that useful, and I really hope I was recording. Yes, I was. So it's been a while, but the longer I go, the more more difficult it is to do videos that are not really long and complicated. Hopefully this one was interesting. Take care, guys. Speak to you later.